All right, so listen, please. We still have another section left of our cells unit. So we started off talking about microscopes. Then we moved into cells. We went over, Ryan, be quiet. We went over all the cell organelles, what they do, what they look like. Our last section of this unit is about something that we call cell processes. These are processes, things that happen inside of cells. And there's 4 things we're going to talk about. First, osmosis and diffusion, and then respiration and photosynthesis. Just real quick, what organelle is this? No. Chloroplast. This? Mitochondria. All right, so we're going to start talking about the movement of molecules. And we're going to first introduce it by talking about some examples. So I know that in elementary school you guys studied mixtures and solutions, right?
No.
Solutions?
No.
Dissolving?
No.
Okay. Anyway, you've all, I'm sure, made like lemonade from powder, Kool-Aid, or put some sugar in a cup of tea. Well, when you do that, if you put salt in a glass of water, you add a solid to a liquid, and what happens to it? Emily? It dissolves. What does that mean? So raise your hand, please. What does it mean that it dissolves? Natalia? It disappears, but is it gone? No, obviously not, because if you put some salt in water, even though it seems to disappear, you could still taste it in the water. What is actually happening to them, those salt pieces that you're adding to the water? Please?
Is it breaking down?
Yeah, it's breaking down into individual salt molecules. And individual salt molecules are too small to see. So you don't see them anymore, but they are still there. And that's why you can still taste them. So we're going to use Kool-Aid as an example here from this. So obviously if you made Kool-Aid, you can make Kool-Aid, and depending on how much water and how much Kool-Aid powder you use, you end up with different types of solutions. So obviously, which one would have a stronger taste? Emily? Yes. What we would say is that it's more concentrated. It's a more concentrated Kool-Aid solution. And glass A has a weaker taste. It has a less concentrated Kool-Aid solution, which has a higher concentration of water, A or B?
A.
A. So B has a higher concentration of Kool-Aid, A has a higher concentration of water. So if we're going to draw kind of a representation of what this might look like, we have 2 beakers. They have the same amount of liquid, but sample A has just a few Kool-Aid molecules. Sample B has many more. And therefore, we have different concentrations in those 2 beakers of water. And so there's a word we use, dilute. If you have Kool-Aid and let's say you made it too strong, what could you do? Okay?
Add more water.
Add more water. You would be diluting it, that's called. And so Kool-Aid is an example of a solution. A solution is made of 2 parts, the solute and the solvent.
Wait, I'm sorry, what? Cool, we're going live.
All right, there's the solute and the solvent. Sorry. What part is the solute? Is it the Kool-Aid or the water? Have you guys heard those terms before, ever? No? All right. Kate, do you want to take a guess?
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, the Kool-Aid. The thing that seems to disappear is called the solute. It's what gets dissolved. the solvent is what is doing the dissolving, what's holding the solute. So Kool-Aid is the solute, water is the solvent in that thing. So let's look at a few examples. Let's say I have 2 beakers of water and I'm mixing sugar and water. I'm dissolving sugar in some water. First, what's the solute in this solution? Solute. Okay? The sugar. What's the solvents in
Water.
the water? So if circles represent my sugar molecules, which has a higher concentration of sugar? Natalia?
B.
B does. Which has a higher concentration of water? Cade?
Sample A.
Sample A. Here I have some salt water. Did anyone ever have to like gargle with salt water like that sort of organism?
Yeah.
All right. In salt water, what's the solute? I want some new hands here, not Emily and Cade and Aiden. Lizzie? What? The salt. What's the solvent? Miranda? Water. Which has a higher concentration of salt molecules? Casey?
A.
A. Which has a higher concentration of water? Aaron? B. So it's kind of common sense. But let's look at something a little different. Okay, now we have sugar dissolved in water, glucose. What's the solute in this example? The solute. Kyle? The glucose. What's the solvent? Madam? The water. Which is more concentrated for glucose? Aiden?
A. B.
B? Emily?
They both have the same.
Same? Kate, what do you think?
B.
B? So if we look at the molecules, how does the number of glucose molecules compare? It's the same, but then why did you say B, Aiden?
Well, it looks like they're more, there's less water, so they're more together, so you'll taste them more.
Yes. So even though they have the same number of molecules, in B we have less water, therefore we have a higher concentration of glucose in sample B, a higher concentration of water in A. Just like if you only had a spoonful of Kool-Aid, you could add it to a whole pitcher of water, and it would not taste very good, or you could add it to a small cup of water, and it would be much stronger, even though it's the same amount of Kool-Aid powder that you're adding. All right, so we talk about these things, these concentrations, because it's important when we talk about this principle of osmosis and diffusion. So osmosis and diffusion is about how molecules move in cells. So first off, we know the cell membrane is a very thin layer surrounding a cell that allows things in and out. And for any membrane, we can use 3 terms to describe it. Some membranes are impermeable to a certain substance. What does that mean, impermeable? Emily?
Go here.
What?
Like, won't, like, wait, what's the question again?
What is impermeable?
It like, it, I don't know.
Elise?
Strong?
Not quite strong, Aiden?
Something that might not affect it.
Not really, kid.
Like substance that can't pass?
It means the substance cannot pass through it. So if a membrane is impermeable to glucose, that means glucose cannot pass through it. So then, what do you think permeable means? Permeable. Adam? Yeah, the substances can pass freely to it. So most membranes are actually semi-permeable. What would semi-permeable mean? Catherine? Yeah, that some materials can pass through, but others cannot. And that's what a cell membrane is. A cell membrane is semi-permeable. Some things can easily move in and out of the cell membrane. Other things cannot. So it's semi-permeable. Now the cell membrane, it looks like this. It has sort of two layers. And then stuck inside of those layers are these proteins. And these proteins are what sometimes allow molecules to move into the cell. Okay? Some molecules just pass freely through. Things like water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, they can go through the cell membrane like it's not even there. Those are really small molecules. So they just like slide right through the membrane. Larger molecules, however, cannot pass through so easily. All right, let's think back to Kool-Aid again. So, concentration. Concentration is how strong the solution is. So obviously this cup on the left has a low concentration of Kool-Aid and a high concentration of water. On the far side, this cup of Kool-Aid has a high concentration of Kool-Aid and a lower concentration of water. So we know molecules are what all matter is made out of. We're made of molecules. Salt's made of molecules. Water, air, cells, they're all made of molecules. And so there's a principle called diffusion. And diffusion is the process in which molecules go from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. For example, each morning when he gets to school, Mr. Arcuri goes in that corner of the room, opens the door, and he puts on his perfume. And when I come into the room in this door, I can smell it as soon as I walk in the room, even though he put on the perfume in the corner. The reason for that is because the molecules of that perfume have diffused through this room. They started off all in that corner when he put that little spray. And so all the molecules start off in a crowded little area. But then gradually they spread out throughout the room. If I put a drop of dye in the water, it starts off at a high concentration area. But those molecules gradually spread out until it moves throughout the water. Think of it this way. Molecules do not like to be crowded. If I were to take every 7th grade student in this school and I have them all come into this one classroom, I think they would fit. Would not be very fun. But everyone would be standing really close. It would be hot and smelly probably. But I could force every 7th grader into this room. Would they be happy about it? No. They would be in a very crowded situation. We can imagine that's like a very high concentration of 7th graders. Okay? So if I did that, and then I opened up that door to Mr. Arcuri's room, what would people do? Would everyone move over there?
No, but
No.
like half.
About half would probably move over there, and you would spread out more evenly. Then I open up the door into Miss Canale's room. What would happen? Yeah, they'd spread out again, taking up more space. So that's like molecules. They don't want to be all crowded together. They will spread out from an area of high concentration to an area of lower concentration. And this is because molecules just move randomly. Okay? They bump into each other and eventually spread out. So here again, we see an example. These molecules are diffusing over time from a crowded area to a less crowded area. one last slide today. When it's water that's moving through a membrane and going from high to low concentration, we have a special name for it. It's called osmosis. Osmosis when it's water moving through a membrane. And just like any other molecule, water will diffuse from a high to a low concentration, from an area where it's crowded to an area where it's less crowded. Molecules always move towards the lower concentration. So imagine this piece of equipment. What I have here is a tube. It's a U-shaped tube. And in between, separating these two halves of the U, is a membrane that's semi-permeable. On one side of this, I pour a solution with lots of salt in it. That's what these purple molecules represent. On this side, I pour a solution that has less salt molecules. All right, let's talk about, so where is there a higher concentration of salt? Alexandria? On the right side. It's a higher concentration of salt here. So which way would these salt molecules want to move based on diffusion? Lindsay? Not up, because there's no water there. They're not going to move into the air. Natalia? Left. They want to go through because it's less crowded over here, just like the 7th graders. Okay? You want to move to a less crowded area. But if the door is closed, what if these salt molecules can't get through? Well, then they're blocked. They're stuck here. How about water? Where is there a higher concentration of water molecules? Avery? On the left. So which way do they want to move? To the right. Okay? From a higher concentration of water to a lower concentration of water. Now, what if water can get through? Then it will move over here. And what would you expect to happen to the water level? Yeah, and it does. The water level on this side will go up. It rises up that tube. Okay? Because water molecules going from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. That's what we call osmosis. All right, any questions about that?